You are one of the senior most members of the government. The Congress is going to go into a huddle. It's going to have to decide on several of these issues. You're also a senior lawyer. You've been law minister. What's happening with the law officers battling it out in public? Harin Rawal's letter to the Attorney General being scooped by our channel, but really exposing the fault lines of a government. The Supreme Court's censure today, talking about the entire process being shaken by the fact that you have the law minister actually looking at the status report that should have been for the CBI's eyes only. Why is the government continuing to say there's no big deal? Why is the government continuing to back all the protagonists in this, including the law minister?
We didn't say there's no big deal. I think we are, if I understand this right, we are dealing with things on merit as they come, not throwing the towel in to an imaginary decision that says that we are wrong.
Why is it? Why do you call it imaginary? I'm quoting verbatim to you from the judge's observations.
No. The judge's observations are important because they come as part of a dialogue process between the bar and the bench. I think the final verdict is what is important when the judge finally decides, having reflected on the arguments, including arguments that take place by virtue of the questions that are put or observations that are made, and at the end of the day the judges then decide what exactly deserves to go into an order, and that order then has an operative part which says this is what you need to do, but the observations in the order would indicate what the judges feel finally is something that deserves to be put in that order.
Aren't you converting what should be an argument about political morality into a technical legal one? In other words, you're actually saying that if the Supreme Court does not specifically say that the law minister has been guilty of something that should not have happened, the UPA believes that there is no political morality or accountability, despite the very strong statements from the court today that talk about shaking the process, that talk about an eroding trust in the CBI, that says that something very serious has happened here, and that the court actually wants to know in what circumstances the status report was shared.
We will tell the court in entirety what exactly were the circumstances, what was the purpose for which it was shared, and what happened subsequently. Indeed, if at all any suggestions that were made were taken on board or not taken on board, all these details, as the court said, must be made available.
Well, the CBI director has listed the alterations.
Fine. So all that has to be before the court, but frankly, if something is to be tested in court and somebody is to be adjudicated in court, is it fair really that we sit outside court and pronounce judgment long before the court has pronounced it? I think we shouldn't be confusing what we have to do in court, and which we are both entitled to, and which I think is appropriate for us to do as a government, is nothing to do with an issue of morality. Now, public and political morality is something that is a continuum that we apply to ourselves, as indeed everyone else must apply to themselves, but it would be fed in by finding of facts or adjudication or pronouncements made by court.
So in other words, still there is a judgment from the Supreme Court. Status quo in terms of the decision regarding the law minister will hold.
Well, I mean, any one of us, frankly, holds our office at the
pleasure of the Prime Minister.
Pleasure of the President, but that in effect is the pleasure of the Prime Minister. And we owe our allegiance to the head of the team, that's the Prime Minister. And that's a decision, frankly, only the Prime Minister can take. And of course, our party leadership, Mrs. Ghani, can take.
But the PMO finds itself also in this controversy after the CBI affidavit says that a joint secretary in the Prime Minister's office also saw the status report. So can the Prime Minister's office disassociate itself from what happened?
See, the issue is not that anyone is disassociating. It's an issue of apportioning responsibility, if you like, whether something was done voluntarily on one's own, or there was a directive, or there was an expectation. All these things had to be clear, and ultimately actually seeing what's going into a report or has been drafted for a report and interfering with it are two different things. So,
but clearly in this case changes were suggested and adopted. We know that.
Frankly, we don't even know if at all the changes were of any substance. So surely nothing is going to be hidden from court. So why don't we just wait to see what the court makes of it?
What about the battle between the government's senior-most law officers? The Attorney General today could not appear in court after fresh allegations by a deputy of his, the Additional Solicitor General Hareen Rawal, effectively saying that you put me in a compromised position, you were the one who interfered, you were the one who proposed changes, you made those changes, you were there when those changes were made. I mean, does this not compromise?
See, I've heard this and I've seen this on your channel. I've not seen the letter. I worked with both these people and I think both have great acumen and are good lawyers. But you know, great minds can disagree. Lawyers have...
You're calling them great minds. In this case, both are coming across as people who compromised on their duty, which was to not interfere with something that the CBI was doing.
See, I reserve my judgment about what the Attorney General of the country can do. The Attorney General is the law officer of court, not of the government. And therefore, where should the Attorney General be willing and prepared and be expected to give advice, or at least to look at what is happening in any part of government? We'll have one government. I can believe that there can be autonomy and there should be accountability, and the courts can insist that certain arms of government should be
at a distance,
at some distance. But I mean, you can't ultimately be answerable to a government outside the country.
But the charge in this case, the charge in this case,
there should not be an illegitimate interference in the autonomous performance of duties that are expected to be done by the CBI or any other agency, with or without court supervision. In this case, there was court supervision.